I am live. I'm reading out of Lord of the Horizon. It is a far memory book by Joan Marshall Grant. She lived from 1907 till 1989, and she wrote 7 books about her far memories, her lives as different people. Here we continue the story of Ra-Ab, which started earlier in the Eyes of Horus, which was a very good book about the Battle of the 600, where they defeated Set. Now we are, Ra-Ab is grown up now. He has a daughter and a son and a new boy coming. And we are in chapter 4 of the second part, the boy and the prince, because the son of Pharaoh, Amenemhet, is now on his way to the Oryx with Ra-Ab, who will take him as his son to educate him. Chapter 4. Senusert was surprisingly docile on the journey, but I knew this mood was unlikely to last once the sense of adventure began to wear thin. I had impressed on him that though his rank was known to my family, they would ignore it. Yet I think he was startled when Mary, who was waiting to greet us at the landing steps, kissed him on the forehead as though he were a most ordinary little boy. As we walked up to the house, Beckett and Amenemhet came running along the path to meet us. Amenemhet and Senusert eyed each other warily, rather like dogs who have not yet decided whether to fight or to be friends. Beckett, whom Mary had decided was too young to be trusted with so important a secret, thought that Senusert was an orphan, and by the way she smiled at him, I knew she had already decided that he needed cherishing, as did the animals which she took under her protection. She demanded to ride on my shoulders, and I saw Senusert's mouth begin to droop at the corners, as it always did when he ceased to be the center of attention. She must have taken this as a sign that he was homesick, for she smiled down at him and said, "You come with me and I'll show you my puppy," adding in an outburst of generosity, you have him to sleep in your room until you have an animal of your own." I could see that he had no intention of accepting this invitation, which he obviously considered beneath his dignity. "You can go with her," I said. "She can stay up and share the evening meal with us, so she will tell you when it is ready." He hesitated and then decided it would be unwise to argue. Ignoring Beckett's offered hand, he followed her reluctantly across the courtyard. Now that I was alone with Mary and Amenemhet, I told them in detail why Senusert had come to live with us. Mary flamed to the boy's defense. "I think it was horrible of Amenemhet to say such bitter things about his son. Anyone, especially a child, would be warped if they had to live with a Babylonian. How dare she terrify him with stories of black magic? It's amazing he's as normal as he is. Oh, Rob, I'm so thankful you rescued him." "What do you think he's really like?" asked Amenemhet more cautiously. "I like him," I said decisively, and by him I mean his essential character, his manners, except to those he considers his equals. He is gracious enough to acknowledge me to be one. His manners, except to those he considers his equals, he's gracious enough to acknowledge me to be one, are deplorable. He is so conceited that it is sometimes difficult not to slap him, and he is a most accomplished liar. But in spite of all this, I repeat that I already feel a great affection for the essential Senusert. "I think he's a horrid little boy," said an indignant voice behind me. I turned to see Beckett clutching her puppy in her arms, standing in the doorway. "What has he done to you?" "He was disgustingly rude to my puppy. He said she wasn't a real breed of dog and was only suitable to a hovel. I don't know what a hovel is, but it must be something nasty, or he wouldn't have said it. I told him that she was a very special kind of dog and that her mother belonged to the keeper of the vineyard. Then we quarreled and he went off by himself and I came to look for you. Can he go away soon?" I'm afraid not, Beckett. He's come here to live with us. Have we got to keep him however horrid he is? She asked, appalled. Yes, so we had better teach him to stop being so horrid. She sighed. That will be very tiresome, worse than trying to teach Niam not to be difficult about beetles. You had better go look for him, I said to Amenemhet. And then take him to see Niam. I'll stay with you, said Beckett firmly. Neri's coming here tomorrow. Mother arranged it while you were away. Perhaps he'll be able to teach Sanuset to be nicer. I'm always less tiresome with Neri than with anyone else. Then she added as an afterthought, except you, of course. Sanuset gave up claiming to be the royal heir when his first attempt had met only with pitying incredulity. I had explained to all the servants who were likely to come in contact with him that he must help me to cure his ill manners. So unless he made a request instead of giving an order, he was ignored, sometimes to his extreme discomfiture. Several times during the first month he went hungry from the table, having ordered a servant to fetch him a certain dish, and on finding this brought no response, being too proud to ask for it with civility. Then for 2 days he refused all food. It was Niam who blunted this weapon, having seen that it had begun to worry Mary. Niam came into the room, and Sanuset had again sat through a meal with his food untasted. Poor child, she explained, turning to me in pretended indignation. Fancy trying to make him eat when he's not well. I've made a special brew, but that will soon cure him. A nasty taste it's got, but he'll soon feel better. Then to him, come along, my dear, and I'll promise by tomorrow you'll feel as hungry as the others. Sanuset scowled at her. I'm not coming with you. Go with him, Niam, I said. Go with Niam, I said. I refuse. The poor child is too weak to walk. You'll have to carry him, said Niam. He clung to his stool with both hands. I won't go. I won't be cured. I won't be carried. I'm going to stay here. Niam put her hand to his forehead. Feverish. He doesn't know what he is saying. In spite of his furious protests, I picked him up, stool and all, and carried him to his room. Niam, who was thoroughly enjoying herself, asked me to stay until Sanuset had drunk the brew she had prepared. The taste must have been exceedingly disagreeable, for he coughed and spluttered before he managed to swallow it. Then we left him alone. Nothing in it but a little gall to make it bitter, said Niam, but I think it will cure his lack of appetite. I'm thankful to say that it did. Neri, who in a few years would be Nomarch of the Hair, knew Sanuset's identity and was exceedingly helpful during those first difficult months. Sanuset, who had considered himself too grand to play with Beckett, now find that unless he was willing to join the pastimes of the older boys in a subordinate capacity, they would have nothing to do with him. At first, he pretended to prefer his own company, but when at the evening meal they discussed the events of their day, accounts which I'm sure lost nothing in the telling, he found it increasingly difficult to remain aloof. He had been so used to receiving servile obedience from everyone except his grandmother and Pharaoh that it must have been difficult for him to take orders from boys not much older than himself. He found that when he was in a good mood they took care to show that they had enjoyed his company, but that when he was disagreeable they told him to run away and stop being a nuisance to his betters. He frequently threatened them with tortures which would be inflicted on them by his grandmother, at which they jeered until he was reduced to tears of helpless fury. Finding that he could make no impression on Amenemhet and Neri, he turned his attention to the outdoor servants, hoping, no doubt, that they would not dare to tell me what he was doing. They had, however, been told how to deal with him. He emptied a jar of dirty water over a gardener asleep in the sun. The gardener woke up. Sanuset found himself floundering in a shallow but exceedingly muddy pool. He pelted with rotten figs at a woman working in the vineyard and spent 3 hours washing the fruit stains from her tunic while her husband sat on the bank of the irrigation channel to see that he was not idle. Mary took no part in this drastic treatment, for after considerable thought we had decided that I would present an authority he must learn to accept, while she must be the symbol of the affection which, because it is born of Ra, is the highest of all authorities. No matter how he had behaved during the day, Mary went to his room to tell him a story before he slept. Even though he knew he was in disfavor with the rest of the household, he found that this made no difference to his relationship with Mary. Sometimes there were tears in her eyes when she left his room. I'm so sorry for him, Ra-Ab. There's such a lot of himself which he has got to fight against. When I kissed him tonight, he threw his arms around my neck and whispered, "Tell Ra-Ab that one day I'm not going to be horrid anymore. There are two people inside me, the boy you love and that filthy little prince who can't help making people hate him. When I'm the boy, I know the prince is my enemy. Then suddenly I'm the prince again, and he thinks that the boy you come to talk to every evening is weak and silly, so weak that people will laugh at him." I held him tightly in my arms. "But they never laugh at the boy. It's only the prince who behaves like a fool." He thought for a moment and then said, "But the prince doesn't believe that. He thinks that no one is important unless their orders are obeyed without question." So I said, "Ra-Ab always tells you why he gives an order. He never expects you to obey unless you understand the reason for it." He hugged me again and then whispered, "That's why the boy loves Ra-Ab nearly as much as he loves you. That's why the prince still fights against him, because the prince tries to pretend he's as wise as Ra-Ab Hotep." So this was the end of chapter 4. I'm wishing everybody a lovely Easter Sunday.